Oh shit, here we go again. Grove Street going down! CJ!
This is GTA San Andreas running on a real Nintendo 64. To get here, I had to rebuild it piece by piece around the N64's limits. The Nintendo 64 was never designed for a game like this. It runs on a 93.75 MHz CPU with just 4 MB of RAM, or 8 MB with the expansion pack. So instead of trying to recreate all of San Andreas, I focused on one vertical slice, Grove Street. San Andreas launched in 2004 on the PlayStation 2, 8 years after the N64 was released, so this was going to be a huge challenge. Every system had to stay inside N64 era constraints, which meant ruthless trade-offs on texture size, draw distance, and active world complexity. The first thing I started with was creating a generic gray floor, just to prove that I could actually get something onto the screen. Once that was successful, I imported CJ's model at around 600 polygons with a walk animation, and he actually loaded in on the first attempt, but the texture was completely black. I assumed it was a material format mismatch, and that was proven correct after I fixed the texture pipeline. But with a 32 by 32 pixel full body map, CJ looked hilariously cursed with almost no facial detail, but I just went with it. Next, I imported Grove Street itself, and at first it came in with the same texture problems. After a lot of cleanup, it finally loaded, and seeing CJ move around the map was actually surreal. But the controls and camera were completely broken, and CJ kept snapping into bad poses. I initially thought this would be a quick fix. Little did I know that this would take me an entire day. But after a lot of work, I finally had a decent camera and solid movement for our character. The next major issue was collision. The world looked solid, but CJ could walk straight through almost everything. If I stepped onto higher ground, he would just phase right through the floor like there wasn't anything there. I added a collision debug overlay so I could see what the map thought was solid. Even with that, one build regressed so badly that CJ could only rotate in place. My next fix overcorrected and put me upside down or under the floor. After a lot more tuning, I finally stabilized floor collision and added a jump animation. The next problem was draw distance. Parts of the map were popping in and out constantly. I tried hiding it with fog, but I set it up wrong and turned the whole scene blue. So I scrapped that approach and pushed render distance instead, plus a few culling tweaks. Surprisingly, it looked way better and performance stayed stable. The trees in games like San Andreas are mostly texture cards with alpha masks. That saves a lot of memory, which is exactly what old hardware needed, even on the PS2. But in my N64 pipeline, they looked wrong and felt like solid cards. The fix was forcing the scene atlas textures to RGBA 16 and turning off face culling for those thin foliage planes. And after all that, trees and bushes finally didn't look like cardboard. After that, I added 2 enemies and 1 ally, sweet. They imported correctly, but they came in completely white, so texture problems were still haunting me. Once textures were fixed, their animation state was a mess, and they were doing totally random moves. I got the random animation bug under control, but then they started moonwalking in place. My next fix technically moved them, but only in tiny slow circles, which looked completely ridiculous. After more tuning, they finally walked forward properly and started behaving like actual NPCs. At that point they could move, but they still felt lifeless, so I added simple interaction logic. They follow routes, pause when they get near CJ, look at him, then continue. The next big addition was a low poly car, but my first import was scaled so wrong that it looked like a toy. Then I overcorrected the scale, and suddenly it filled the sky like some giant car god. After dialing in the scale, it finally looked right, but with no collision, I could still walk straight through it. To fix car collision, I built a collider directly from the car mesh bounds, then scaled it into gameplay space. I also used the same bounds for interaction distance, so entering the car matches its actual footprint. After that, I wired in driving controls, and for the first time, the car actually felt usable. I also added drag and acceleration shaping so it doesn't feel like an instant on-off arcade toggle. Once that was in, driving around Grove Street actually felt sort of like I was playing a scuffed up version of the real game. The next pass was audio, and I added sounds for almost every action in the build. Footsteps, jumping, shooting, menu clicks, vehicle enter and exit, engine behavior, and the horn all got their own cues. The game felt way more alive, which really shows the power audio has on our perception of a complete game. I built a proper UI layer. I added a health bar, money counter, and a minimap style radar with NPC blips so you can actually read what's happening. After that, I added a full start menu flow with start game and credits. And yes, I made sure to credit myself properly. It sounds small, but adding menu flow made the project feel way more complete from the first second you booted. The final gameplay pass was combat. I added target markers over enemies to make fights readable, especially in the lower res presentation. Taking enemies out now rewards money, so that was a little additional feature that we added. The final major feature was a scripted mission sequence that ties all the systems together. I kept it focused and cinematic, so it feels like a real gameplay moment. I also built a secondary Cluck and Bell location you can run around in as a scale test. It's still limited, but it proves this could eventually grow beyond just Grove Street. Once the full build was stable in emulator, there was only one thing left: test it on real hardware. So I loaded it onto a real N64 with the expansion pack installed and ran it on a classic Sony Trinitron CRT. And at this point, I let the real hardware footage speak for itself.
Grove Street going down! CJ!
What you just saw was the full vertical slice running on real N64 hardware, not just an emulator. Honestly, the biggest surprise was how stable and smooth it felt across combat, driving, and traversal. Considering the hardware limits and how many systems are running at once, that's a huge milestone for this project. One thing that really surprised me on real hardware was pacing. In emulator, you can get used to forgiving conditions and super fast iterations. On a real N64, every hitch and transition is way more exposed, especially on a CRT where motion and timing feels immediate. So seeing intro flow, combat, mission logic, and driving hold together in one run was a huge moment for me. It wasn't perfect, but it crossed the line from experiment to an actual playable slice. If this grows beyond Grove Street, the realistic path is expanding South Los Santos in chunks, Ganton first, then Idlewood to the west, East Los Santos to the north, and Willowfield to the south. Those areas are naturally connected by choke points like the Ganton rail border and the bridge routes, which is perfect for streaming sectors in and out on N64. So instead of one giant always loaded map, each district would carry its own geometry, collision, and spawn set, then hand off as CJ crosses those boundaries. The same idea applies to population. Keep a tight active NPC set around the player, and rotate who's alive in memory as you move between blocks. That won't be full San Andreas in scale, but it could absolutely feel bigger than a single cul-de-sac. And that's where the project stands right now, a playable San Andreas inspired vertical slice running on real N64 hardware. There's still a lot I want to improve, but this proved the core idea actually works. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing as it really helps the channel. Leave a comment below suggesting what you want to see me do next, and I'll see you in the next one.